So, our team name is the Floaters, consisting of Chanel White, Andy McLeod, Ashley Kirkwood, and Ashley Vetter. And this is our final presentation walking through the design cycle of producing our concrete canoe. At the beginning of the semester, we started with simple planning. We assigned roles to members within the group, as well as made a timeline for important deadlines. Next, we researched how we were going to construct our concrete canoe. The first factor we researched was the ideal aggregate we should use to make the canoe as light as possible. We found that glass is the ideal aggregate for concrete when making a concrete canoe. However, glass is expensive and could have become a safety hazard during the construction of our canoe. The second most recommended aggregate was perlite, which is a material that is typically used for gardening. This is the aggregate we decided to use to make our concrete canoe.
Subsequent to researching, I created a 3D model of the canoe mold on SolidWorks. This gave us a visual goal to work toward and try to achieve. Next, we purchased and collected our materials, which consisted of perlite, cement, water, styrofoam, a bucket, wax paper, duct tape, and sandpaper. We then built our concrete canoe by carving a styrofoam mold in the shape of the interior of our canoe and covering the mold in wax paper so that the concrete would not stick after drying. We mixed our aggregate, cement, and water, and then slathered the concrete mixture onto the outside of the mold. We let the canoe dry for almost a week under a large bin to prevent it from drying too fast and cracking. Once it was dry, we removed the mold from the inside of the canoe and then sanded it down using sandpaper and an electric hand sander to meet the size requirements.
We tested the durability and functionality of our canoe multiple times by placing it in a large tub of water and applying pressure with our hands to simulate the weight of the marbles being applied to the canoe. After each of our tests, water had started to seep into the small holes in the walls of our canoe, so the holes were patched after each trial. Furthermore, we ensured we met all of the requirements and constraints by thoroughly reading the concrete canoe project description. We repetitively measured the dimensions of our canoe to make sure it would meet the size requirements. We made sure not to go over the $40 budget, and we also made sure to meet the shape requirements, such as the V-shaped bow and stern. Eventually, all of our hard work paid off as we won first place and held about 8 pounds of marbles in our canoe before it sank.
We had a handful of challenges that we had to overcome over the course of the semester. The first issue we faced was finding a time to meet to work on the project that could work for everyone in the group. We all have pretty tight schedules, so finding even just an hour or two during the week turned out to be pretty difficult. Another obstacle that we faced was finding the right consistency of concrete. When we first started mixing the concrete, the mixture was very watery, and we could tell it was not going to be able to hold the shape of a canoe. The last major challenge that we faced was sanding the walls of our canoe down after it had dried. When we were slathering on the concrete initially to the styrofoam mold, we put the layers on too thick to try to minimize the creation of holes. However, the drawback with this approach was that once the canoe dried, we had to chisel, chip, sand, and grind down the sides of the canoe because there were inches that had to be taken off. This was pretty time consuming and costed us almost 5 hours. If we had to do the project over again, we would have started working on the physical canoe earlier. Time management is an important factor with the concrete canoe project since you have to allow time for the concrete to dry. And when you're doing prototypes, those need time to dry as well. So you have to start even earlier than you might think you need. Additionally, we would have painted our canoe just so it looks more visually appealing.